Mario, will you start us off a little bit with really the beginning, going back to the beginning of your career and how you got into acting? Because I think, that's a great story in and of itself and one that not everybody may know.
Yeah, so my dad had wanted to be a writer. Actually, he wanted to be a tennis player.
Wow.
I just wrote a play on my dad called MVP, and I was going through all his stuff. Dad wanted to be a tennis player. He said, but my tennis game was terrible. So he thought, well, his second favorite love was he wanted to be a writer. And then it was only after watching films, in particular Westerns, that he decided not enough of us were reading books and that we were watching movies. And if you wanted to reach what Marx called the lumpen proletariat, the great unwashed, you got to go to where the people are. And then you need to speak the language that they need to hear to get them there, which meant some form of edutainment, i.e. figure out what you want to say and then how you want to hide it. And so, and at the time, we talked about this a little bit, Mia, is in a Western, if you saw a Western in the 50s, if you were Mexican, you didn't need no stinking bachas. You were sort of the oily bandit. If you were Chinese, you were the deferential houseboy hop sing. If you were black, you were scared and shuffling, or part of the Motisa tribe, Mokofisa, the servant class. If you were a woman, you were pale and frail and in need of rescuing, and the only good engine was a dead engine. So it was very much a colonizer point of view, and if you weren't white and male in those early Westerns, you were shit out of luck. And so my father said he could do better than that, and he was a mathematician. He went out and he realized that films were 92 minutes, so he got 92 minutes of film, and he cut his movie together, and no one ever told him about editing, so his first feature was 12 minutes long. And I was in it. So you say, how do I start? As a 2-year-old child in a movie called Sunlight, he took his movies to Hollywood, and they said, we don't need elevator operators. And he said, no, I want to be a director. Yeah. And they said, we don't need elevator operators who want to be directors. He said, listen, they said, we're making colored movies, but they don't make money. He said, that's because you're not making black movies.
Okay. Yeah.
You're not showing black folks the way we want to be seen, so we ain't showing out and buying tickets. But once you do that, you'll change the game. And they threw him out. So he thought, and my dad's he doesn't take things personally, which is a wonderful thing. He never took. You've got to take things personally. You got to deal with things seriously. But he didn't think that sexism, racism, classism, lookism should stop him from doing what the heck he wanted to do. He said, you will face these isms in whatever field you're in. So be in the field you love and make changes within that. So right?
Completely.
So Dad and Mom got together and they said, well, hell, let's get out of America. Let's go see what the original colonizers are doing. So they went over to France, and they went to Amsterdam and then France. Yeah. And when we were living, and I was about 4, and I slept in the closet. My sister slept in the bathtub. My parents had no money, and we traveled all over. So we went to Morocco, we went to France, we went to everywhere, and then cross socioeconomic lines. And in doing that, I found that I had this ability to tap into the smorgasbord of humanity, right? And so I thought, oh, wow, it's interesting. I saw culture as a choice, not as a dictate that had to be followed, right? So when I got to the States and they said, well, boys don't play with girls, I was like, best friend is my sister. Well, whites don't do this and blacks don't do this. Well, mom's white, dad's black. So I was that guy. I was a different brother. Yeah. And so I found that acting was a way that I could show us our connectivity and our common denominator, and not just, and that of course you could use this powerful medium of film like D.W. Griffith's coon porn with Birth of a Nation, which would divide us, but you could also use it to show the love.
And unite us.
Yes. I've never been to China as a kid, but I was there in Last Emperor. I was never in London in the 18th century, but I was there with Oliver Twist. I was Sugarcane Alley. I was there with Uzan Palsy. Do you know what I mean? So film had that ability to transport you and get you to fall in love with folks you might never meet. And once you love and understand others, you don't otherize them. It's harder to go to war with them.
Beautiful. Thank you. I know. See, you're already crushing, just like me. I know, totally. So, then one of your first professional roles was in a play. You went right into working into theater. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom took me around to theater. My mother loved to act, except she was a terrible actor.
Oh, really?
I could never hire her except for silent bits. I tell my mother, there's no small parts, only small actors. But anyway, she took me to audition in theater. And, I think about my life now. I got a trippy life because my dad, I'm just going to say, he's like a black Superman.
Yeah, yeah.
He worked with people of all colors. He once said to me as a kid, he said, Mario, first he would say, he started out with, Mario, you don't know shit.
Right.
That's not a problem. I'll help you.
Yeah.
So he said to me, a bird is aerodynamically sound. So a bird can fly beautifully because it's aerodynamic. Now, a bumblebee is black and yellow. It's not aerodynamically sound. But since the bumblebee don't study aerodynamics, he flies any damn way. And he's like, that's me. Yeah. I'm like the bumblebee. Anyway, so my mother took me around to plays, and I got in a play called 1,000 Clowns, and as this role of Nick. And that was in San Francisco. And little by little, I started auditioning for more things and building. And then eventually my dad came back from France. He was off climbing the mountain. Right. Again, my mom and dad were young. My dad was 24, my mom was 21. Wow. My mom and I hitchhiked to Altamont to see the Rolling Stones. So I had a white, crazy, fun, hippie mom. And my dad took me to Black Panther meetings.
Yes, very cool.
And I got a gay aunt, I got a Trumper aunt. So I got to love with big aunts, man, which is an advantage as a filmmaker because you need to know how to speak to this person and that person. And I found it to be dexterous as a human being has been very helpful, especially in the arts. So I got into theater. And then when my dad came back from Europe, he came as the French delegate to the San Francisco Film Festival in '68. So my father had made a film called La Permission. Yeah.
Story of a 3-day pass.
Story of a 3-day pass. Mm-hmm. And while he was over there, he learned French and he interviewed a young revolutionary named Malcolm X. So my dad had interviewed Malcolm. He comes back to America with his film La Permission, and they had no idea that the French director, with a name like Melvin Van Peebles, was American, let alone a brother from Chicago. Okay. So of course, my dad rolls in. There's a little lady at the airport with a sign. She's got blue hair, and she goes, Monsieur Melvin Van Peebles, délégation française, Monsieur Melvin. So she's holding up the sign, and he rolls over. Ben oui, c'est moi. She's like, don't mess with me. He goes, no, c'est moi, je suis Melvin Van Peebles. And he shows her his passport. So the poor lady fell out. So he gets in. They drive to a hotel in a limo that he could have stayed in before because he had been a cable car operator. And his film wins the San Francisco Film Festival. And this embarrassed Hollywood that the poor black man had to go all the way to Europe to the original colonizers to make it. And that's when they offered him Watermelon Man. And that's how that whole situation came about. So Dad would have me go to meetings with him with my notepad. Yes. And I was incredibly bored. I thought he was a paternal fascist. Didn't like the cat that much. Right. But he would have me write all this.
This is how all kids feel about us.
Totally. And I would write all this stuff down. And I, at some point, realized I was learning all this. Yes. That all this stuff that he was doing, from integrating the unions and
well, he was a genius because he was doing it all, and he was thinking about how to teach you in the process and giving you this little notepad, had you busy, but also had you learning, not even knowing you were learning, because if he said, I want to teach you, you would have been like, I don't want to do that, right?
No, not with him.
Yeah, right. Okay.
My dad was not that kind of pop.
Okay.
I'm the user-friendly version. But I saw him do incredible things early on, and he told me at some point, he said, some fathers will teach you to play ball. I'm going to try to teach you how to own the team.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Because as an artist, if I had just been an actor, I wouldn't get to storytell like this. I had to speak economics because we respect economics. And there's always that place where art meets commerce, where you have to know the line.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to monetize that which I love.
Yes.
That was a huge lesson.
Amazing. And he did it all. And so I want to kind of fast forward a little bit and talk about the fact that after the play and your sort of young life working in theater, you are mentored by none other than Clint Eastwood.
Yes.
For your, and some people know, for your breakout film, Heartbreak Ridge. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, there's a little story before that that's important because that helps set it up.
Okay.
So after Sweetback, my dad's film, becomes the top grossing independent hit of all time, outgrossing Love Story, he invited us to Hollywood. Now, typically, like think of musical chairs. Whatever chair you're sitting in when the music stops, you get to do more of that chair, right? So Melvin Van Peebles had directed and starred in this movie, Sweetback. The studios had a script about a white detective. They redid it in black and called it Shaft after that. And then Superfly came. So he, in effect, changed cinema in America.
Showed them that black action cinema is real.
And he goes back to his friend. I wrote about this in the play MVP, Jerry, and says, before when I was here, they told me they didn't need elevator operators and that there was no black audience. Are they listening now? Yeah. And Jerry gave my dad the bad news. And the bad news was this. He said, do you remember when the government tried to draft Ali? And Ali said, I don't have to go fight some yellow man, some other guy in Vietnam, millions of miles away, thousands of miles away. He's not repressing me at home. He's not redlining me. He's not stopping my vote. That's not my enemy. So no, I'm not going to go fight the yellow man for the white man. He embarrassed the U.S. government. And what did they do? They blackballed him and took away his belt. He said, Melvin, you embarrassed Hollywood. You made it without their marketing team. You made Sweetback without their approval. You made Sweetback without their bank. They've branded you a troublemaker. They're going to imitate your formula, but you will not get another serious job offer. And I saw that happen to my dad. Yes. Anyway, my dad, this is big though, Mia. So my dad invites us to a party in Hollywood. And I told my younger sister that the Jackson 5 were going to be there. Okay. Well, they weren't. But anyway, so we had big afros. I had a big brown afro, and my sister had a big orange afro. Her hair is naturally red. So we go to this party. It turns out it's something called a bat mitzvah. We didn't know. So my dad says, it's this bat mitzvah. It's got to come to this. We go, and there were a lot of kids. They had a band. They had a big old mansion-y kind of joint, like an early McMansion. And they had a band. They had a DJ. And no one was dancing. Everyone was shy and standing around the dance floor. So my sister and I think we're on Soul Train. So we get up. We told the DJ, yo, man, would you put on something with some more soul? So they put on James Brown, Jackson 5. We were killing it. And all the folks at the bat mitzvah started to gather around and clap, enjoying it. And my dad comes around. You never know what Melvin Van Peebles was going to say or do. And he just watched us. And he went like this. I look at my sister, like, okay. So we go over, he takes us into the library. It was like something out of Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, wow.
And he looked at us and he said, yeah, you know I love you guys. I love you and you're beautiful and you dance like you're on Soul Train. But I feel sorry for you. I appreciate you trying to get a party started. But you have to understand in life, there's two things people got to love about you. They have to love who you are, Mia. But they also have to love who they are when they are with you. The way you're dancing feels like a challenge. Like if you don't have the perfect gear, the perfect flow, the perfect moves, don't bother coming out on the dance floor. What you're saying subliminally is watch us, but you're not saying join us. And until you bring out the beauty in others, you're going to miss out on half the beauty in life, and I feel sorry for you. Yeah. And then he dropped the mic, and we're like, damn. Yes. We went back out. My sister got
such a philosopher.
Oh, my sister got the old dude up who had been to Auschwitz. He starts teaching us the Charleston. I got this other girl up. We got the whole spot dancing. And one of those people at that party funded my second movie in Hollywood when I grew up. And so the lesson he said was, good friends, good allies, good loves come in all colors and flavors. Do not leave love on the table. And that set me up to be open to mentorship. So when I met Eastwood, who didn't vote like me, sure didn't look like me, but he took me under his wing and he taught me a lot. And he introduced me to the Warner Brothers Brass, which would later be looking for a director for a film called New Jack City, and they would need a blackologist. Hence me. And that's how that went down.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's those dynamics with people that don't always think the same way. And if everyone did, life would be boring.
Yeah, and that's perfect timing because we're going to move into a clip of New Jack City in a second. But I also love you and Megan in Sweetback where you say, "Can we wash your car, mister?" You with your big afros. They're so cute, right? And then she says, "Can we wash your car, mister?" And you both say something like, "You don't pay if you don't like it.
Don't charge if you don't like it.
Don't charge if you don't like it." Adorable, adorable. So thank you for moving us forward to New Jack City, which is such an important film, right? It marked the beginning, in many ways, of new black cinema, right? The new black realist movement, which was really the black new wave that brought our attention to a whole group of filmmakers that emerged. And you really helped kick that movement off, get that movement started. And interestingly, it's like 20 years to the day, practically, after your father has released Sweetback, Baadasssss Songs. So that was just, that's sort of like the stars aligning. Raise your hand if you're familiar with New Jack City. Okay, very good. Y'all are doing your homework.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Well, obviously, then it stars Wesley Snipes and Mario Van Peebles and Ice-T and Chris Rock and Judd Nelson and Michael Michelle and Bill Nunn, Tracy Camilla Johns. Brilliant film about Nino Brown and organized crime during the crack epidemic and the era of Reaganomics, creating kind of economic underdevelopment of inner cities, and really a complicated and interesting story. So how did you know? How did you know what to do? This was your directorial debut and it was an incredible financial success. And it catapulted the movement really in many ways of new black realism. How did you know? Know what to do?
Well, the thing is, I think the thing is this. I didn't know macro picture what it would mean to the culture, but I understood micro, right? I knew that my granddad had said, luck is preparation meets opportunity. So I was pretty well prepared growing up with Melvin Van Peebles. And now I had gotten the opportunity. So I had already been directing 21 Jump Streets with Johnny Depp and Wise Guys. So I was, born at night, but not last night. And I didn't talk about directing.
There's all these great phrases. I need to write them down.
So I didn't talk about these things because I was behind enemy lines. So they didn't know the depth to which I understood and had gone through film. But I also had gone through the process, almost through osmosis, seeing my dad do it. And I knew that we needed to be in the house, not just as directors and actors, but also eventually as writer-producers, that would become a thing if we weren't going to have the doors shut on us again.
Right.
So, I went to Dad and I asked him his advice, and he said, "Oh, that's easy. You got your first feature, Kipling's If. Learn it. So, if you can trust yourself when men doubt you, and yet make allowances for their doubting, to wait and not be tired by waiting, or lied about, don't deal in lies." And the last part of Kipling's If, where he says, if you can talk with the crowds nor lose your virtue, walk with the kings nor lose the common touch. If neither loving friends nor foes can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can feel the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds of distance run, yours is the world and everything in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And
Are you swooning yet?
yeah. And recently I was talking to a fellow director, Brother James Samuel, and he found an old copy of Kipling's If, and he sent it to me as a gift. It was lovely. So I was well prepared. I also understood we were in an interesting spot because when I did the film, they were making Bonfire of the Vanities with Tom Hanks and Bruce Willis at the same time. And Warner Brothers was very excited about that film. We were we had their lunch budget basically, and so I was able to sort of play the black card a little bit at that time and get in there, and I had a different understanding of cinema as a whole. So, my producers were African American, and so we laughed because during that time, if you were a brother in an action picture and you were an actor, you played the police commissioner. You're sort of past your sexual prime, and you said stuff like, do do it by the book, I'ma have your ass.
Yeah.
And you've seen a lot of great black actors play that role, do it by the book, I have you. And so we laughed. We said, oh, wow, we should get a white dude and get him in here. And he could say, do it by the book or I'll have your tail. And we laughed about that. And I thought about what that meant now as a filmmaker. It was a real interesting point for me. And I went back to my house and I have this wall with all the family pictures. And like I said, I've got brown, Asian, gay, straight, black. I got everybody on my wall. And I was looking at all my relatives. And I thought, if I start making reactionary get even cinema, that's not a step up. That's just a do unto them as they've done unto you, not as I would want them to do unto me. And so I went back in there and I said, no, man, I want my New Jack Cop and my New Jack Gangsters, but for my New Jack Cops, I want to have a bad Asian brother, so I got Russell Wong. I want to have Judd Nelson, dope Jewish brother who I went to school with at Stella Adler's acting conservatory. I want to have Ice-T, who wanted to play the gangster, wasn't fond of cops, and have him switch roles with Wesley, who wanted to play the cop, and have him bring his street authenticity to that role. Nice. And I'll play the police commissioner and say, do it by the book. So that's in essence what you're seeing there is my version of that guy. But because I didn't want to feel that in making a hit film, we had to marginalize anybody else. Right. That was not going to be what I wanted to do. And the big things in New Jack, which were key to me, was in almost every gangster movie, you emotionally connect with the gangster. It's a gangster movie. So if you watch Godfather, you connect with a guy who's got family values, but he cuts off a horse's head and he kills people. And if you watch even Scarface, you know, guy's got a mountain of coke, but you kind of like him and he's kind of cool and he wears some dope shit, you know. And so you emotionally wind up connecting with a gangster. Now that's one thing when it's white folks, because a lot of those films were made when Prohibition had ended, and so they could say, well, that's how it used to be. But with crack, which is still a killer in the black community today, I didn't want to do a wholesale glorification of the drug dealer or his lifestyle. Right. So I said, let me make it more Untouchables, where against, De Niro still has the badass, sexy role, but against Kevin Costner, Sean Connery, and Andy Garcia in the Untouchables, you had viable role models to say yes to. Make sense? And then in the middle of that, see if I could get the audience to feel something for the victim. And I had two cats I was auditioning for the victim, was Chris Rock and Martin Lawrence. And I wound up going with Chris Rock. And in the middle of New Jack City, when Chris Rock's character starts to get addicted to crack, we had folks get up in the audience and say, just say no, motherfucker. Wow. And to get them to respond to that way against the drugs, to de-glamorize the drugs in the context of a gangster movie, that's a cinematic trick that I was proud of. I was like, oh, I got the brothers and sisters. And then at the end, when the old dude comes up the steps and says, idolater, your soul is required in hell, bop. You know, so to get those kind of geopolitical conversations in New Jack where Wesley's character says, this is bigger than Nino Brown. We don't have poppy fields in the ghetto, but we go to jail for these drugs. We don't have gun manufacturing plants in the hood, but we go to jail for it. But the moment you follow the money train, it very quickly leaves black hands. And you realize that to some degree, the hood and is considered a self-cleaning oven where we implode and turn on each other and commit black genocide. And so showing those levels in the movie, besides making a film that could be a hit, that was where it took some skill set. Sure. I would think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you have a gift for turning these geopolitical and political issues into weaving them into the narrative. I'm thinking of Posse, right? And Rodney King, right? And the Rodney King beating. And the way that film, the way Posse so brilliantly weaves in a moment that parallels the beating of Rodney King, and how sort of cleverly you do that. Right? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you know, and because you gave me this wonderful intro, which was, you said cleverly done. I hope so. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, part of the thing was, you know, in Posse, you have to understand all cinema happens in some sort of historical context. And so the historical context around the time when I made, first of all, I had heat from New Jack City. Let me just be clear. They wouldn't have let my silly ass do Posse if I didn't make money in New Jack City. whatever chair you're sitting in when you make them money, they're gonna go, ooh, that chair looks really good on you. So they invited me back to the chair. Why don't you make another New Jack kind of film? And having worked with Eastwood, who said, almost 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 cowboys was black. Hence, he put Morgan Freeman in Unforgiven. So in the first 44 settlers of Los Angeles, I think almost 26 were African American. We never saw that history,
Nope.
right? So, but Hollywood does that. The dominant culture imposes themselves in a dominant way in the frame, right? So we know karate is a martial art invented by the Asians. Karate Kid don't get to be Asian, baby.
Right.
Heavyweights look like Jack Johnson or Mike Tyson or Ali, but Hollywood make them look like Rocky. You know what I mean? So Dances with Wolves will not star a Native American. So you had to understand the psychology of that. And so I was able to, in Posse, say, okay, I want to make this Western, and I have the heat to do it. And I had sat in a chair that said director, but it also said actor. So I was a part of affecting change as a filmmaker, a job creator, and as part of a recipient of that change as a job seeker or as an actor. So that's a unique position to be in. Typically, the guys that blaze the trail don't get to benefit from it. But when Denzel was busy or Spike was busy, they came to me and said, why don't you act in this? Why don't you do? So that was cool. I had no problem with being the blackologist. So I wanted to do a Western, and they said, why you want to make Old Jack City? Or Boys in the Saddle, you know what I mean? They had all these. And so not only that, but Mia, they were trying to get us to compete a lot as filmmakers. And so I deliberately took Woody Strode for the opening of Posse and then had him hand the book of knowledge to the Hudlin brothers, my fellow filmmakers, right? I deliberately said, okay, maybe I could be a leading man, but I'm gonna take the best looking black man in the world, which is Blair Underwood, and put him in the movie. And the best looking white man in the world, which is Billy Zane, and put him in the movie. And the second best looking white man, we couldn't afford a Baldwin. There's always a Baldwin for your budget, though.
I love that.
So we couldn't pay for Alex, we couldn't find Billy, but we got us some Steve Baldwin. And so I wanted to mix it up because that's the world. And so in that, what happened in '92 was the uprising. It wasn't because of the tape of Rodney King. It was the reaction to us seeing that even when they have the tape, the verdict that they come up with is still not guilty. Yes. Like he was doing some kind of, Rodney King was doing some jujitsu with his face against the billy clubs. Like, it's crazy. Exactly. So, and what did we do? We get pissed off and burnt down our own neighborhoods. So the one place where the studio came to me, and I did a Melvin Van Peebles on him, they came to me and said, Mario, we'll go with Posse, we'll do this thing, but please, at the end, you have the white sheriff ride in, and my character, Jesse Lee, says, if you burn down anything here, we ain't gonna burn down our town, we're going to your town. Yeah, nice. And they said, you gotta take that out. Oh. You gotta take it. They want to be taken out. And not only that, I had my dad, so in the cinema history of it, I have Melvin Van Peebles a la Sweetback. Yes. And I say playing Papa Joe. So my character says, and just in case you think we're playing around, I look over at Papa Joe and he presses the dynamite and blows up the sheriff's office. Yeah. So they're like, you gotta take that out. Of course we did. And when the stuff hits the fan and the whole thing's going wrong, we have one of the actors look out and go, during the Rodney King quote, he goes, can't we all get along?
Yes, that's Nipsey Russell.
So if you know your history, if you know cinema, you go, wait a minute. The Posse of the 50s, that's headed by Woody Strode, who's the big guy on the poster, who's the super bad brother. Yeah. And then the Posse of the 70s, which is Pam Grier, Isaac Hayes, Lawrence Cook, Melvin Van Peebles, Nipsey Russell. Yep. You know what I mean? And then Posse of the 80s, which is Big Daddy Kane, Tone Loc, me, Sally Richardson, and all of us. So you really saw us generationally passing on knowledge, which is often cut off in our community. And I wanted to show that, and I wanted to show the collab. Not to mention that my other mentor, my big mentor, Stephen Cannell, who gave me my first directing job, is in it, and his daughter was in it. And I just brought all the love.
So I love the detail with which you create, a Black West. And it's beautiful because it's the kind of image of a Black West that we hadn't seen, right? And you bring back the Western at a time when no one had been making Westerns. So congratulations, it's really important. And so I just want to transition though to talking about, we're going to talk about Outlaw Posse in a minute, but so a lot of time goes by, right? In terms of you returning to the Western. You've been absolutely prolific in television and in film. And so it's hard to decide which way to go, but you've directed so many episodes of popular television shows. You directed episodes of Roots. You directed episodes of Damages with Glenn Close. You've, worked on so many television shows and many, many movies. So what do you want to talk about? I mean, like in terms of that, the evolution from Posse to Outlaw Posse. You were going in a lot of different directions.
Well, first of all, I've been lucky in that I've been able to keep working. So that, when I was on the cover of the New York Times with Singleton and Matty Rich and the Hudlin brothers.
They've got to have us.
They've got to have us. And they asked us about, we were all feeling high and robust because the New York Times wants to put us on the cover. And, but something very interesting came of that. They asked us how did it feel to be a part of the Black Wave? And I said, well, because I'd seen through my father that, you've had the Brat Pack, the Black Pack, I guess we are, and the Rat Pack. If you're part of a wave, hopefully you know how to stay on your surfboard. And Clint Eastwood had said to me, no one gets to be flavor of the month for 30 years. And to do that, you want to be pretty good at staying on your surfboard. And that means, like it or not, finding ways to use your creativity and your art. And I make a list of it because, I majored in economics, so I'm big on lists. So try to list out what you're good at. Say, this is what I'm good at. So the more that, and I list out all the things that I'm pretty good at. And the more that my job utilizes all the things on my list, the more I'll feel complete by my work, right? So when I list it out and I go figure out, so part of it is that I can fund it. I can speak the economics of it. I know people, I can make them money. I know the system to some degree. It's mercurial, it's always changing. But I can and I have no ego on being in, 90 more close-ups of Mario. When I did New Jack City, it wasn't 90 more close-ups of Mario. It's whatever makes the movie great, right? So I'm fine with I'll direct some things I'll act in. I just acted in something playing Mira Sorvino's husband, and I didn't direct it at all. So I'll flip it up. So one is being flexible. Yeah. That is something that I found has helped me as an artist. The other is having a broad zeitgeist. Travel. As an academic, when I was at school, it was about books. But for me in life, I'm a nerd for people. Yeah. Listen to people's stories. Listen to the rhythm. Listen, just at our lunch today, Gayleen asked, what are you excited about this year? That's a wonderful question. You know what I mean? So find out what your brothers and sisters on this planet at this time are thinking, especially ones that don't look and vote like you. That's really interesting. So I think that's helped me stay alive because I'm ultimately genuinely interested in others. Yes. Right? So I think that's one thing.
And in storytelling, so telling other people's stories.
Telling other people's stories so that when you have a film like this, that's a big cast, you can give everyone, as you said, their shine. Give everyone their moment. It's interesting. Even take New Jack City, where, Wesley is saying, I'm making my money the old-fashioned way, like the Kennedys did. That America was founded on gangstering, the colonizers' gangsterism of taking the Native American land, enslaving Black folks. We're going to make our money the old-fashioned way. And Ice-T's character says that may be what we were founded on, but if you conflate freedom by any means necessary, like Malcolm said, with get paid by any means necessary, then you are reducing freedom to money. And Crack makes money, but it'll kill you.
Exactly.
Fossil fuels make money, but it'll kill you. So at a certain point, you have to think beyond that. So I would give even the villain his truth, the antagonist and the protagonist their truth, and then have those truths be diametrically opposed. And that makes for a pretty interesting tennis match, don't it?
Yeah.
When you go, I can understand this, I can understand that, but they're actually coming at each other. And that has to do with listening to other folks and saying, how do we weave this in? And so we find our line. And then the other thing is saying, who do I want to reach? Who do I want to touch? Who do I want to affect? And how can I affect change in a positive way within this business and hopefully in front and behind the camera? And so that's been the hidden story, is that you don't see on the screen is, I got the first guy to be, I got one of the first people in Canada to be a black stuntman, just like my dad got that woman in. I got someone else in, someone helped me get in. My Stephen Cannell, who was my mentor and gave me a shot, who's again Republican, doesn't look like me or vote like me, I was able to give his daughter a shot.
Yes, yes.
You know what I mean? So passing that love on,
you
that
pay it forward and
pay
backwards.
it forward and sideways,
Yes.
and it'll come back to you like a Dickens novel. And that's not why you do it.
Right.
You don't do it for return investment. It's not an ROI. It's just as a human being. And I think I found that in this business, Mia, we're not just dealing with lights or scripts or cameras. We're dealing with people. And at some point, it comes to your people skills. For me.
Right. No, that's amazing. And you're such a beautiful example of all the talents of your father kind of like come to fruition in new ways, but also with all that you've added onto it. And I got to see him like at work. So this is a secret I'll share with you all. I got to be, on set and of Outlaw Posse during the production and watch Mario at work. And it is incredible because he is acting and directing, and he's like setting people, putting extras in place, telling you what your blocking is going to be. And so I was like, how are you keeping all of this in his head simultaneously? Then he gets ready, gets in a shot, he calls action, and they go. So it was really just this beautiful, brilliant thing to watch you pull together in Outlaw Posse, which stars Whoopi Goldberg as Stagecoach Mary. We have your son, Mandela, is in it. Cedric the Entertainer, Edward James Olmos, an incredible cast. You want to talk about like what brought you to this film, and why you decided to make it when you did?
Well, I felt that when I did Posse, I had my dad, and I had a wonderful, one of the best roles I've gotten to play has been son to Melvin. The most wonderful role I've ever played has been dad, and I have my son now, and I have one of sons. I've got a big ass family. I saw the Jackson 5 as a kid. I was like, oh, I want to have my own group. Oh, we gonna do this, man. So I wanted to have a bunch of kids. So when I made Outlaw Posse, I didn't have my dad, but I had my son, and I thought, what an interesting thing to be a black filmmaker. And have made Posse with my dad and make this with my son and get to be the connective tissue between the two and pass that love straight through. And Mandela said the other day, he said, in doing Posse, we didn't have to fake the love. It's real, it's on the screen, it's for real. And we didn't have to fake the drama. That's real, and that's on the screen. And so when it comes from a real place. How many of y'all know who Stagecoach Mary is? Anybody? Okay, a couple of y'all. Stagecoach Mary was a badass sister. This is before women could vote. She had her own deal with the U.S. Postal Service riding her stagecoach up through Montana. And she had a big cigar and a big shotgun, and don't no one mess with Stagecoach Mary. She was a bad chick. And Whoopi Goldberg cast herself in it. I didn't cast her. She said, no, I'm playing this role. And
because you were in it.
Correct. Yeah. So I was in the scene. She said, if you're in it, I'm in it. So in this particular scene, Mandela plays my son, and is my son, is up on the top of the stagecoach. I'm with Stagecoach Mary, and we're riding on the top of her stagecoach because somehow we lost our horses, which you'll see when you see the movie as to why that is. She looks over at Mandela and says, boy, you're lucky. You're the first generation that's can legally call a black man father. This is 1863. Your dad and I were born before then. You couldn't be a black father. It was illegal. The white slave owner made all the decisions for the child. They usually got rid of the dad. They'd keep the mother around and nurse the product, but they'd push the dad away. So you're part of the first generation. So how's your dad doing? And he sort of stays quiet because we have some issues. And she says, well, y'all Negroes ain't dead yet.
Right.
But the notion to understand that we couldn't even be legally black fathers until 1863 and 1865 if you're in Texas, because they slow it down in Texas. So considering that, we've come a long way, baby. And what I wanted to show, which was kind of fun, is that in the Van Peebles family, we've had a strong paternal line. My grandfather, to my father, to me, to my son. And for people to get to witness that and say, that's real, and that's a beautiful kind of love. Being a dad is some of the best love you get, and don't miss out on it.
Yes.
So on one level, it's a Western, but on another level, it's a story of fathers and sons. And that love. And then there's a whole lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah, a whole political level too. And another level that I want to throw out there, which is the aesthetic, that you also pay homage to spaghetti westerns.
Right.
So when you all come to see it as part of the season, right? And watching it here, you will see the homages to spaghetti westerns, even in the credit sequence, right? So it's these beautiful moments that really have a payoff for us as spectators, as fans of the Western, as people who want to see the Western reimagined.
One of the lines we have a T-shirt that says, slavery was legal, taking native land was legal, destroying the land was legal, not letting women vote was legal. When the laws are unjust, sometimes the just are outlaws.
I want a T-shirt. I love that.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So I would love to talk about, one film that I haven't been able to see, actually, Panther.
Right.
And I love, your discussion about why that's been hard to see. This is a film, obviously, about the Black Panthers, and this was going to be a Van Peebles family project. But I've looked everywhere, and in the States, it's hard to find. It's hard to get access to the film. It's not readily available on streaming platforms. Amazon's like, to access it, click here. You go there. This film is not available. It's like, well, then why tell me to click here? You know what I mean? So do you want to talk a little bit about Panther and the process of making that?
Yeah, well, the process of making it, all right. Okay, here we go. I'm going to let y'all inside. So, after I did New Jack and then I did Posse, they were like, well, what do you want to do next? And my dad had taken me to meetings of the Black Panther Party when I was a kid. And when Sweetback came out, they put the clips of the pictures of the movie across the front of the Panther paper and said it was required viewing that all the Black Panther chapters had to go see Sweetback. Mm-hmm. Because they posited that Sweetback made being a revolutionary hip, going up against the man, going up against the system. Later on, one of the Panthers would tell me, Shaft was great, but it made working with the man hip. So overtly, you still had an empowered looking brother with a mustache and cool soundtrack and cool clothes, but you'd gone from going up against the man, being hip, to now working with the man as hip. Then to Superfly, we're now dealing drugs against your own people as hip. So what was happening was, although Hollywood's not say just white or black, it's also green, the color of money, they were very consciously draining out the revolutionary core of the cake. The icing may look the same, but the cake was being drained out. And the same thing was happening in music. Melvin Van Peebles starts doing spoken word. Gilgot Scott Heron, the last poet, saying the revolution won't be televised, all the way up to Spikes, and PEs going fight the power. But eventually you'll be nodding your head to gin and juice, or nodding your head to something about us wearing Gucci or shooting people. Like, how is that?
How is that revolutionary?
Dude, not at all. So what happens is you have a generation that's inherited the bravado and the stance of a Malcolm, of a Panthers, but without the political ideology to support it. You see the difference?
Exactly.
And so that's where I was saying, and that's what a line in Outlaw Posse comes up, where one of the things I wanted was when I did Posse, I was a younger man, and he was that story was about a younger brother who's sort of out for revenge on some level against wrongs that were done to him that needed to be addressed, no doubt. But if a man hasn't changed much in 30 years since then he hasn't grown a lot as a human being. And the difference with Chief is he's grown, life has whooped his butt a couple times, he's got a sense of humor, and he's had to figure out. And so there's places in Outlaw Posse where you can really see, I think, the growth of the character. And there's one particular place where we go to Native American land, and we've got to take the shortcut through because we're being chased. And the Native American chief they had a different relationship with us as people of color and non-colonizers, where you could work out a deal. And so the chief says, we will let you pass and go on our land, but you cannot enter our land with slave names. You're going to have to get your spirit name. And that's a process. So they give us the drink, the magic drink. And I'm like, we about to go on a ride. And and this is something you don't see in a Western every day. We take the magic drink. And in that experience, Chief hears, my character's named Chief, he hears the Native American chief say to him, when you buy into the values of a people who would buy and sell you and your people, what have you become? And so it asks some interesting questions. And so one of the things with the Panthers was they asked those questions. So my dad had written a book on the Panthers. Yes. So we took the book to Hollywood. We met and my dad didn't want to go. I said, come on, Pop, come on. So we went, and the studio executive said, Mel, I love your book. Oh, it's wonderful, your book on the Panthers. But here's what we got to do. We got to make one of those lead guys white. My dad is like, oh, man. Right. He's getting to go red, black, and green on this dude. I'm like, oh, Dad, no. So I interrupted. I said, Dad, and I said to the executive, I said, yeah, I appreciate that. No, but, that would be inauthentic. Authentic was the catchword. Authentic was the word. Oh, yeah, I can see that. Okay, but, the Panthers did have a lot of powerful support. They had Jane Fonda, they had the Sutherland family, and they had Brando. How about we take a young student from Berkeley, and she's like a Jane Fonda kind of character, and she meets these 5 black guys, and they're a little angry, and she teaches them to read, and they become the Black Panthers.
Oh, yes.
Now, that they do a lot of White Chick Saves the Hood movies. You put Michelle Pfeiffer or whatever. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is not going to work. And so we had to do all kind of work. And that's the thing, is that's what you don't see on screen, the behind the scenes work as a producer to get these things done. It's not the acting and the directing. That's the great when you get that work. But you ask anyone who really knows it, it's getting to that point. That's the hustle.
Getting the money, the resources, lining.
So I had to figure out ways to do that cinematic jujitsu and get it funded without Melvin killing anybody. Keep Dad over there and me over here, and then get the Panthers involved. And we got Tarika, who's one of the first black women to join the Black Panther Party, to be our tech advisor. And it was a marvelous experience. However, the movie at its core is in a way the prequel to New Jack City, because what it says is, and it was revealed now when all these archives are open, is that the FBI's mandate at the time vis-a-vis the Panthers was to destroy them, like they did with Dr. King, was to say, let's prevent the rise. This is COINTELPRO. I don't know if you know COINTELPRO. But let's prevent the rise of any black messiah who might unify or electrify black people. In other words, anyone who might be inspirational.
And who might unify poor whites and unify with black folks. Because then you have a rainbow coalition, and they didn't want that.
Well, this is when it gets dangerous, right? So in other words, if Malcolm, and goes back to the Malcolm X factor, if Malcolm is just at the temple, he's a KKK recruitment poster. But when Malcolm goes to Mecca and prays with Muslims of all color and says, it's not your skin color, it's your spirit, then he's a problem, and they take him out. Dr. King, if he just stays at the Baptist church, that's okay, cool. But when he starts talking about marching on Washington and poor people and economics and Vietnam, oh no, Negro, you done overstepped. Then you're a problem, because now you're marching with Jews and you're marching with rabbis and Christians and linking arms.
It's real political power.
That's political power. Same thing with the Panthers. When the Panthers are just in Oakland, but once they stand up and get the brown berets and the Mark Rudds and the white country, the kids from Berkeley starting to join together and think beyond our little box, it's a problem and they'll take you out. So we made a movie on the Panthers, and it says that, and this was the reaction to the Panthers, was that when they realized that imprisoning Huey meant you had more Panthers in Chicago. Shooting Fred Hampton meant you had more Panthers over here. So they're like, back in the day, you could cut off the head of the snake and kill the snake. So if you took out Malcolm, you took his movement. If you took out King, you could slow the movement. But with the Panthers, they were coming up everywhere. So the solution, the final solution, if you will, was to let hard drugs flood the community, in the Black community. Now, the Italians understood this. When we showed Panther in Italy, this guy said, this was not even a surprise to us. We knew it comes up in The Godfather that as long as the drug stays in the Black community, it's cool. It's a self-cleaning oven. And that creates the New Jack City phenomenon. You with me? Mm-hmm. But America didn't want to see it. Because when we say that line that Nino says, which is, how come if we have all these drug manufacturing plants, they're not here? Right. How do they get in? Follow the money. Yeah. Guns have to get in every day. How does that get in? Why are we allowed to have all these crazy guns in America? Yeah. Makes no sense. The gun lobby is very, very powerful. Money. Follow the money train. Mm-hmm. So we said that and they flipped. Wow. And so they tried to ban the movie. We won awards over here. But it was one of our most difficult movies to get out. If you can see Panther, some people are using it to teach it in school. If you can get a copy of it, see it. But you could show us killing each other in the hood with New Jack. You could show us popping each other in the West, but don't show us standing up to think and voting, and especially across color lines. When we link arms together with our white brothers and sisters and our brown brothers and sisters and our yellow brothers and sisters, we become a force. And right now, especially with what we're dealing in this country, in our country, in America, we need to collaborate and come together and unite more than ever. It's no joke.
Yes, that is so well said. That is so well
said. Good question. Well, first of all, I wouldn't really. I don't believe in my heart that it's Trump's America. So I want to just clarify that. And I can only answer it as Mario. I don't know for other folks. But here's the thing. It's like, before apartheid fell, their two favorite shows were The Cosby Show. I'm not talking about litigating the man, but the experience of the show. And Miami Vice with a white leading man and a black leading man. And then apartheid falls. And I'm not saying that's why apartheid falls, but it's interesting that 20 years before you have the Obamas as a clean, professional family, you have the Huxtables. And my father felt that if he could make Sweetback, and when he did Sweetback, black folks didn't have facial hair in a movie. That was too much. So my father felt that if he could show people of color as leads in a movie, could we one day conceive them as captains of industry or leaders in a political movement? So you sort of, although we don't work in brain surgery, to some degree, you have to understand kids want to be the success they see. So I believe that, and look, it's interesting that my dad does Sweetback, then they come with Shaft, then they come with Superfly. And eventually Hollywood makes more and more, and they run those sort of urban action flicks down, right? Now,
into the ground.
And if they made a lot of Vietnam-themed movies and those movies stopped making money, they'd say, Vietnam-themed movies aren't making money. But they wouldn't pin it to the color of the actors in those movies. They wouldn't say white movies aren't making money. But in the case with these urban action pictures, they said, must be black films that aren't making money. So you have a 20-year lag. And in those 20 years, at the end of that, you've got boys and girls growing up seeing those movies that are too young to know the dream is not for them, right? So you've got Spike, and you got the Hudlin brothers, and you got maybe Ava, maybe even Tarantino, and you got little Mario Van Peebles, and we just going, I want to be a movie maker. So we go out there and do it. So there's almost a 20-year lag. I think, and we're just talking about it at lunch, that we had the most educated, elegant, no drama couple in the White House ever with Barack and Michelle, where the most drama was when the day Barack wore a tan suit like Ronald Reagan did.
Yes.
And they were freaking out about that. And Fox News was saying, because they did a little fist bump, oh, that must be a terrorist fist bump. And New Yorker had a cover of her looking like Angela Davis and him looking like Osama bin Laden and doing a fist bump. You know what I mean? Where we had that couple in the White House, and I think that the cultural reaction to that on some level is what we're seeing now. That if you play Monopoly with a rich kid and you start to win, he'll start to try to change the rules. And so what you're going to see is they're going to try to dismantle the things that allowed some sense of fair play. Even though we have the Electoral College, even though we have, folks in DC can't vote, and we have a lot of things that don't make America, unfortunately, a true democracy, meaning one person, one vote. They're going to try to shift it further away from democracy because there is this pendulum's got to swing this other way.
Backlash.
And I think democracy is like a car. If you take your foot off the gas, the car will slow down. But I think that what we're seeing, I hope, makes folks wake up and realize that our democracy is fragile. It is worth protecting. And you don't want to F around and find out. Mm-hmm. And I think we're experiencing that, and I hope people wake up. Now, what do I think is going to happen? I think Democrats are going to have to find a way to make sure their message is heard, not take constituencies for granted, and figure out the right balance. I try to do it through whatever I can through my art and see if I can raise consciousness to the best I can and be a force for good as the best I can through the business that I love. That's kind of all I can do. But the rest, I'm open to learning and listening. I campaigned for Kamala. I went to Atlanta. I went to Philly and knocked on doors. I don't like to lose, but I definitely don't want to lose without a fight. But now we got to figure out how to regroup and come back. And I think once you've seen Paris, it's harder to keep folks down at the farm. I think it's going to be harder. Look, in 1908, when I did, which is the time period of Outlaw Posse, America was more divided, and hurdles were incredible, and Reconstruction was, a wonderful time, but had been, one of the things you'll find out in Outlaw Posse was that we were robbing banks. But why? Because we're getting reparations that were supposed to go to enslaved people for 250 years of working and didn't go, and went to the white slave owners for the loss of their property.
40 acres and a
mule. That's
mule.
what happened after Reconstruction. Lincoln died, and they switched it around. That's happened to us before. Le plus ça change, le plus ça reste le même. The more things change, the more they stay the same. History doesn't just repeat itself, it does rhyme. So we got to know our history. If we don't know our history, don't know where we've been, we don't know how much we can overcome, baby. We can overcome this. And as a world, I think we're ready for it. Beautiful. That's a really good question. And one of the things that is so dope about this, and I appreciate you guys being here, is that one of the things I miss about not having the old man around is these conversations. And it's really nice. Thank you for your question, sir, and your question. I remember, and it comes up in the play MVP, which we just did at Lincoln Center. And it's one of the things that comes up is sort of the lessons he taught me as a young man growing up. And I looked at him once and I said, man, just as an artist, the struggle you have to go through as an artist is monumental. But put on top of that you're a black man in America when, pretty fresh off American apartheid, right? Did that ever make you bitter? And Dad said, well, you could face sexism, racism, lookism, classism, even working at the post office. So you might as well be in the business you love and make changes within that. Mm-hmm. And then he said, one of the things you've got to do is travel, man. He said, Mario, where you were born in Mexico, the Mexicans treated me fine, but they were hard on their own indigenous native population because the Spaniard colonizers had done a job of brainwashing on them too. He said, when I went to France and I became knighted, a chevalier, and Monsieur Melvin Van Peebles, j'apprends le français, I learned French, they thought I was an exotic Negro, right? Mm-hmm. But they would beat up on their Algerians. Mm-hmm. And they're still doing gnarly stuff in France now. I mean, in Africa now. Mm-hmm. So every people seems to have some other people that they beat up on. So you got to look at the tendency towards global tribalism. Don't take it personally, but deal with it. Get out there and figure out how to do what you can about it. So that was, because he said, if you let it make you bitter, it'll kill you and it'll kill your art. Mm-hmm. So, and that's one of the things I love about Mia, I was saying, is that she's fun and funny and smart and academic, and tall and badass, and doesn't leave her femininity at the door. You know what I mean? And so when you see that, you go, oh, it can be fun to be us. Yeah, exactly. We were talking about this, man, and this was so important, is that I didn't even know all the advantages I had. Because I grew up I grew up in America where everyone, we worship money. A lot of folks, I don't, but we got a lot of folks, you can tell by the way I dress. But only thing on the money is all white men. No women, just all white dudes, right? Santa Claus is white, Easter Bunny's white. So when you grow up in that, but you have a father like I had, who had joy working with people of all colors and being the boss, it gives you such a confidence that you don't even think about, man, I just was like, am I talented enough to do it? But I didn't have any doubts. It's like, if you grow up as Margaret Thatcher's daughter, it doesn't mean you have to agree with her politics or not, but it'd be hard for people to tell you women don't have a place in politics. You feel me? And we were talking about this, and this is very important, is that there's a phenomenon where, when a baby is in the mother's womb, it feels the mother's vibration, her energy, her love, her, if she's had Indian food, she might get a little gassy. The baby is connected, thinks of that. Now the baby comes out, and if it's a boy, if it's a girl, it grows up nursing with mom and feels, oh, I'm gonna be lovely like mom. But as a boy, at a certain point, we go, wait a minute, I'm not gonna be like mom? What am I gonna be like? And maybe that's around 1.5 or 2. At that point, we have to look across the bridge, and maybe it's dad, or maybe it's our uncle, or maybe it's our grandpa, but some man that makes being a man look like fun. And now as little boys, we can go across the bridge emotionally, get with Manville, and then turn around and love mom as her little man. That's a very important stage. That stage was pretty smooth for me. You feel me? That's why in my movies, I tend to want to see something that my dad said wonderfully at a film festival like this. This guy stood up and said, Mr. Van Peebles, I've watched your cinema. Is there a theme that runs throughout your pictures? And my dad said, yeah, niggas win. and then he said, in front of the camera and behind the camera, niggas win, just like for years they've been winning, because we need to see that. No one wanted to be us when we were the servant class, just doing the Motisa thing. When they were telling our stories, no one wanted to be us. It took Melvin Van Peebles and people like Ossie Davis and Gordon Parks to start telling our stories. And then when we said we can be beautiful and Shaft and Superfly, et cetera, now we want to be us. So part of what Dad would say, make sure that there's something life-affirming and that we win, that there's some fun in it. And that doesn't mean at the expense of anybody else. You can't fight racism with racism. Music is almost like a third character in some of my films. And if you think about when my dad did Sweetback and he finds this unknown group called Earth, Wind, and Fire to do the soundtrack, how much music becomes a part, because we're an auditory culture, right? So what happened all over, but in America, we had all these different tribes brought over during the time of slavery. And they took away the drum and they took away the language, but they couldn't take the flavor, they couldn't take the rhythm. So if you gave an Italian man a mandolin, it would sound beautiful, right? But you give the black guy the guitar, the mandolin, the rhythm will go to that. So you go, dun, 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 dun. And that becomes the basis for blues, rock and roll. You let white folks sing about their God. They say, well, you can't sing to your God, but you can sing to our God. He's got more followers than your God. Okay, so we'll sing to our God. We'll, Jesus wept the falling tear. You get black folks, when Jesus wept the falling tear. So you get the flavor coming, right? So that rhythm went other places. Those spices went into other places and became soul food. Whatever we touch will bring some flavor to it. We'll bring a whole different color to it. And so what I wanted was in cinema, and Dad started, and of course then Shaft and Superfly with great, great soundtracks, was to be very cognizant of flow. And here's the thing, if you look at a picture, your eye can look anywhere on that picture, right? So that's what happens. But if you watch a movie or you listen to a piece of music, you've got to listen to the beginning, then the middle, and the end. And so that means it's going to have a rhythm and timing. But the thing is, we shoot a movie out of sequence. So imagine trying to sing a song out of sequence. It's pretty tough to do. So a new director might not understand the rhythm, but I go in it with my head. So for example, in New Jack City, of all those push-ins going across the city and then looking down at the New Jack City, and then in one shot, go all the way to Wesley coming out the car, and he drops the guy over the bridge. Now I know what that shot looks like. I'm going, money, money, money. I'm going to Queen Latifah. And then that's a nice lyrical move. And then I'll chop it up with New Jack Hustler going down the steps. Hustler, Hustler, right? So I'll chop it up knowing what I'm going to do. So I direct with it in my head. And that's why it has a rhythm to it. And some people's stuff gets more disjointed. I'll direct it knowing what I want to do or having a good idea of what I want to do. And that's how it flows. And then I'll go, okay, that's going to flow into this. I've got Levert. They're going to pass it to their kids. So Troop becomes Levert, right? Or Levert becomes Troop, right? So that you get the thing that, and that's what makes it. And back in the day, you had the pyramid. The pyramid was that record sales start small and build up. Mm-hmm. And movie sales, your opening weekend's your biggest, they start high and go down. And you wanted to hit the pyramid. So if you drop that music early and the constituency that digs your music is the same constituency that likes your movie, you got you a hit.
Yeah. See, you could listen to him all day, right? I know. I could too. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I know many of you are here for the screening as well. Please join me in thanking Mario Van Peebles.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.